Welcome, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Erin Portillo. I will be your moderator for today's webinar, where we will be discussing using social and behavior change to expand access, build trust, and meet the family planning needs of youth. Slide, please. Thank you. So I will start my camera so you can see me. Good morning. My name is Erin Portillo, as I mentioned. I'm a senior program officer working on the Breakthrough Action Project, which is USAID's flagship social and behavior change project. I also work a lot on the West Africa Breakthrough Action Project. I'm based with the Johns Hopkins Center for Communication program, and also I'd like to take a few moments to introduce you to our speakers whose voices you'll also be hearing today. Very first, Catherine Harbour, who will speak about findings from a recent and ongoing review of youth-focused digital reproductive health and family planning interventions. We'll also hear from Léopoldine Tossou, a young professional working with the Merci Mon Héros campaign, who will talk about using a discussion-based tool called Empathways to strengthen empathy for youth among family planning providers and among community members in Côte d'Ivoire. We'll also hear from Thon Okanlawan, the reproductive, maternal, newborn, child, and adolescent health lead with Breakthrough Action Liberia, where the team is using existing Let's Talk About Sex, reproductive health focused radio show episodes to host in-person discussions about reproductive health and family planning. Each of these presentations will explore the challenges that we face in youth social and behavior change programming regarding expanding access to family planning and reproductive health information and services, and the role that trust plays in this question of access. We'll also talk about how Breakthrough Action programs have tackled these challenges and what we have learned from these outcomes. A few logistical details: the Empathways session will remain in the main room so that we can continue to use the interpretation function. And we'll also be sharing recordings of today's roundtable, including all 3 breakout room sessions. And additionally, we will be providing a webinar recap document, both in English and in French, so you don't miss the highlights from today's roundtable, and to share with those afterwards who perhaps were not able to join us. Slide, please. As an overview of what you can expect today, following these opening remarks, we'll move into our breakout sessions of those presentations I've just described, and also noted in blue on your screen, for about 30 minutes. You should have selected your preferred breakout sessions at registration, and we will do our best to honor those choices. Following each presentation, there will also be some time for discussion before we return to the main session for report out. Finally, we'll conclude with closing remarks from Amy Uccello, the Senior Youth and Reproductive Health Technical Advisor with USAID. Once again, a reminder to please mute yourself when you're not speaking. Thank you so much, to allow all participants to hear the presenters and the remarks being made. Once again, welcome to all of our participants and also to each of our presenters today. And please give us a few moments while we assign you to breakout rooms. A window should pop up on your screen momentarily to direct you. Thank you.
So my name is Catherine Harbour. I'm a senior program officer at Johns Hopkins Center for Communication Programs, working on the Breakthrough Action Project in a couple of places. I've been working with Erin and also Kelsey Crow on the on this review, and I'm going to start the slides if that's okay. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. So again, welcome. We'll have about 10 minutes for this presentation and then about 30 minutes for discussion. So the challenge that this review is trying to address is the balance between leveraging the potential of digital spaces and ensuring that young people have the skills necessary to selectively engage with the content they encounter and also the access to that content. Our 3 research questions are here. How do young people use mobile and digital technologies to address family planning and reproductive health information, to access that information? What types of content resonate best with youth? And then how do they decide what information that they find online is correct and reliable? Our methodology, we have 3 data sources. First is a review of documents, literature, peer-reviewed literature, and gray literature. We've collected over 60 and retained about 30 of those. Key informant interviews. We've conducted 22 interviews, pretty much equally divided among implementers, researchers, and funders. And then soon we'll be launching a survey of youth in low and middle income countries. So those are our 3 data sources. And I'm going to present some of the findings and then our recommendations thus far. The findings I've selected to present are those that are focused on the themes for today's event: expanding access and building trust. So first, we found that digital can be an effective addition to reach segments of young people, but it's not always the best. It's not a magic bullet. And that's will come up in the recommendations about when to choose digital. Second, the context, the demographics, and the infrastructure that a youth lives in affect their access to online content. Many of the interventions that we learned about focus on providing reproductive health and family planning information to young women. There seem to be fewer options for other genders, other sex, or for boys. Next, the online platforms, youth value online platforms for anonymity, for confidentiality, and also that they can access it without the bias that they may encounter if they talking with a service provider or in real life person. Online content is queen. More on this in recommendations. And finally, this field is very dynamic. It's growing geographically. Platforms come online. There are more methods coming for marketing, for monitoring and evaluation. Okay. So next is our recommendations. So I'll focus on 2 of these, but just to talk a little bit about all 5. First is to start with the best practices for social and behavior change, and also for working with youth. So some of these best practices involving youth throughout the project, also starting with knowing the intended audience, starting with a landscape analysis, needs assessment, asset mapping. Third is defining clearly the goal of the program. Maybe the goal relates to development priorities related to the Sustainable Development Goals, for example. Maybe the goals of the program are to build demand for services at providers. Maybe the goal is just to share information about reproductive health and family planning. Maybe the goal is to create a community, to offer opportunities for self-expression for youth, or to strengthen capacity of youth. So the goals will help to inform the complementary monitoring and evaluation framework. And finally, it's important to identify segments within an audience. The audiences typically can be kind of big, and so defining segments and really designing to those segments is a helpful approach. Second recommendation is to convene the right team, to make sure that you've got the right skill sets within the team of people working on the program. So youth, the end users, also, and they may appreciate opportunities for capacity building. Also expertise in the legal environment in the country or the area within which the program is intended to operate. Information technology, expertise in family planning and reproductive health, expertise in social and gender norms, content moderation, expertise in content moderation, social marketing and search engine optimization, and finally graphic design. Those are some of the skill sets that are useful to have on a team. Also linking with making partnerships, for example, with government, with private sector, with service providers. That's a helpful aspect of many programs. And I'll talk a bit more about how content is queen, and also about the expanding the offerings. A final point about monitoring and evaluation. Many programs can be built, but it's important to assess if people actually use them, if the intended audiences use them. So they're built, but did the intended audiences come to the site that was built? And this it requires attention to marketing, search engine optimization, monitoring engagement, both organic engagement and sponsored engagement. And some of the metrics that can be used, like time spent on a page, repeat use, that's an important one. Monitoring and evaluation can also link to services and to see if youth are engaging with the content and then seeking services. And it's important to plan for adaptive management to know what's happening on the site and to be able to react in real time or quickly to optimize the use of the site. Okay, so final points, or a few more points about content. It's important that the content is trustworthy, and to make it trustworthy, it should be correct. It's helpful that it's in the audience's own words. Branding it with a trusted organization, which may or may not be a government body, that can be helpful depending on the context. It's important, and a real plus of the digital offerings is that it can be responsive, so it can be more interactive than broadcast forms like TV or radio, and that's a real advantage to a digital platform. So the repeat engagement is a good metric of trust. So one of the implementers we talked to told us that their intended audience comes to the site daily. 45% of their users come daily. So that seems like a real demonstration that the users trust the content and trust the website or the app. Some other points, and this is probably similar to what you've seen in other SBC for youth recommendations, that it's not scary. It might use humor rather than horror. One of the implementers we talked to referenced making something that's got the tone of a mascara commercial, which seemed appropriate. Using a holistic approach to relationships. It's not just about HIV prevention, rather it's about relationships and a more holistic approach. Livelihoods, also things that are relevant to youth in general, is a way to bring people to the platform and keep them coming back. The competition for the user's attention is fierce, and it's important to remember that as a designer, you're competing for attention with every series, every meme that you've ever seen and shared with a friend, as well as you're competing with erotic content. Okay, a couple more points on content. Some of the experts we spoke with and the documents we've reviewed refer to using role models. So like a nurse or an auntie, a doctor, a friendly doctor, a young woman, and also storytelling platforms have been helpful. It's important to be aligned with the audience's values, priorities, and experiences, and to offer viable actions. And user-generated content has been used in several of the sites, several of the interventions we spoke with. And moderation strategy is very important here. Coming back to who's on the team, this is part of the recommendation about using user-generated content and moderation to make sure that chatbots are responding appropriately. If someone perhaps discloses something in a chat situation, that they are not given an inappropriate answer. Safeguarding also if someone is sharing information that needs to be acted upon to protect safety. It's important that the moderation strategy is able to respond to that. Okay, the final recommendation is to expand the content offerings with respect to sex and gender. More boys than girls worldwide own smartphones, and there's few platforms intended for their use. So this our reviews pointed this as a potential gap or lost opportunity, and also highlights the need for mixed channels, so both offline and online content to reach the priority audiences. Okay, so finally, and influencers also might be helpful. They can take content where their users take them, and that can be helpful as well to work with influencers. Okay, finally, so some discussion questions here. Any points of clarification before we start the discussion? Okay.
And I was wondering if you could just speak a bit more about the organic versus sponsored engagement.
Sure. So some of the experts we spoke with and websites or apps that we looked at, digital content that we came to understand a bit more, were working with what users brought to them or what the intended audience brought to them in terms of topics or questions they were interested in. For example, one of the Love Matters groups in Egypt, they have a different topic every week for the year. So they decide 52 topics and then have users bring in their own interests and questions related to those topics. But the platform is responsive to what the users are curious about, asking about. How's that?
Great, thanks. It's Clara.
Okay. So I'll just ask if anyone has any general impressions, any feedback on these 5 recommendations, and I'll put them back up on screen. And then our other 2 discussion questions: what opportunities exist to build trust between adolescents and adults in the digital space? And what are educators, health workers, and digital content creators doing to ensure that adolescents and youth are accessing quality information? Okay. Okay. So let's see, I think we have 15 participants, so not too many that we couldn't just speak out. If you're more comfortable, I can look for raised hands.
Hi, this is Nishit from Mumbai.
Hello.
The question that comes to my mind is app versus content on regular social media. App requires somebody to adopt the app, download an app, and install it. Regular social media tends to work slowly at its own pace, and it's very difficult to pace it up, unless you invest heavily in promoting it. When you do that, then it becomes more advertising online. So that's a question I have. I do not know the answer. I'm hoping to get one here.
Thank you. I can respond a bit, but perhaps someone else in the group would like to start with the response. From our research, one thing that came across clearly is the depending on the intended audience's access and availability of data and device to access content with, many people recommended working on developing something that can fit within a regular social media platform that the youth would already be going on to. Not trying to develop a new app and then trying to attract people to that app. Would you like to describe a bit more what the situation is you're encountering where you are?
A few years ago, we wanted to create a viral on social network about sexual abuse. And we studied it a lot, did some research, and no matter what content we did, we couldn't take away the preachy, element about it. Then we made a film. The film is called Komal. The film about, an animated film, a 6-minute film. And that film, the moment it went on YouTube, it just acquired a life of its own. We got calls from some 30 countries, including the UNCHR, who wanted to dub it in their local language and use it. It became a kind of iconic landmark film on child sexual abuse. It has more than 30 or 40 million views on YouTube. And we kept thinking, what is it that made it? In India, some school reported on sexual abuse. Parents immediately went to this site and made it a viral on WhatsApp. So sometimes we felt that, what becomes popular in terms of what becomes viral is something very difficult to define. No matter how much we researched it, it's very difficult to define. Maybe it's topicality, maybe it is the non-preachiness, that comes with it. Maybe it is the boldness with the concept. So it's sometimes difficult to define it, particularly in family planning issues in India. Here we have such a wide range of target audiences. You have the rural population, where generally the male wage earner will have a smartphone. Nobody else. Everybody else will have the regular old phone. Then you have urban audiences where, because of the pandemic, all the children are online and they all have access to smartphones. So you have this extreme ranges of youth experiences within a same market. 100 kilometers to the north of the city, you have a totally different audience experience. So it becomes very difficult to build something that is more homogeneous across, let's say, a few districts or a state.
Terrific, thank you. I hope you've been able to see in the chat, congratulations and some appreciation for the success that you've achieved with getting views and the attention to Komal. It sounds like a really groundbreaking piece of work. So thank you for sharing that experience. Would others like to chime in about this? Amy has her hand raised.
Yeah, I was just thinking to myself, I got to imagine that trying to chase after what might become viral is going to be an impossible task, and that continuously tweaking what kind of digital content that you have so that it does become more popular is a better approach, but recognizing that there's a constant need to adapt. What's viral today is certainly not viral. What's viral this morning is not viral by this afternoon or by the next day. Sometimes, there's passing whims of what's important. And so true commitment to a single site does happen, as Catherine was saying about Love Matters, but then is not as popular across the board. So I would think resources are one of your first questions as to, can I make something that I can continuously adapt with young voices a part of that adaptation? And what platform would best meet that need? Because the work that we're doing here at USAID on an app illustrates a very highly intensive, resource-intensive approach. And that might not be as feasible. So perhaps social media that is constantly changing, constantly adapting, listening to young people about what they want, and recognizing that you might have a ton of clicks today and next to none tomorrow, because as they said, the competition out there is fierce. But yeah, I would say let's pay attention to what you can afford, knowing that adaptation is probably what's most needed.
Okay.
Amy, I agree to much of what you're saying. What I would really like to understand is that, when you look at media like television or radio, there is a definition of what is the noise level there. So you can actually quantify, what level of noise you need to make and how different you need to be in order to stand out. Unfortunately, in social media, that kind of a quantification is almost impossible. The level of noise changes based on the time of the day and the day of the week, as well as the topicality of it. So it's very difficult to quantify. So it's like putting a effort every single day and updating it every day, which is an enormous amount of resource.
Thank you very much. Joanna has written some comments in the chat.
Yeah.
Joanna, would you like to just say what you've written there, so that if people are calling in on their phone, they can?
Sure. Yeah, I was just sort of agreeing with Amy about sort of the resources and thinking that it's an ongoing thing, not just about the maintenance, but as others have said, it's about kind of creating the return visits, keeping the content fresh and interesting. But I think we've also found that from some of our social media campaigns as well on existing platforms where we're trying to reach young people where they are already, but it still requires intensive support as well. And I think sort of more than we expected in some ways, in terms of how much is still needed in terms of the resources to keep it going, to keep it fresh.
Great, thank you.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
Hello. May I?
Yes, Sanjay, go ahead.
Yeah. The thing is that your presentation was very nice, and the concept of utilizing social media and digital communication for family planning, creating awareness is very interesting. But unfortunately, my experience with the health workers in India is that most of the time they are not indulged in the creation of any social media messages. Rather than they are just a forwarding agent. Whatever they receive from the different resources, they are just forwarding it. Most of the time, they are not, means either you motivate them and they forward, or they have knowledge about it, but creation of message is very difficult for the these health workers, especially at grassroots level. We have tried. I'm in a health education. We are teaching diploma health education to the student, and we make them to create certain kind of messages. But most of them, I have seen that they are not preparing, rather than they are trying to copying from the different resources what they are getting, and that is the thing. Then second thing is that when we talk about the content creating companies and all that, or resources, uh, they are not that much touching the subjects. The international agencies like UNICEF, UNFPA, WHO, they are creating, but then again it becomes quite difficult for the people to reach. Most of the time, my experience is that I have a countrywide pan India students, and I have seen that many of them are not aware about the different sites from where they can get such kind of message to spread through the social media, or even for the national health portal which we are having in India, which is creating this content for digital media. Even they are not aware about this national health portal also. So uh, first of all, we have to generate awareness among the health workers and professionals that there are the resources from where they can get the communication messages which can be shared with the youths in their particular area, so that they can educate the communities for family planning and the new the new contraceptives, or the way we are doing the things. So that is the thing I wanted to share with you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sanjay. So if I could just summarize, I believe you're referring to the difficulty that health workers in India might have to create content. So they're needing to be provided with content that they can share and forward with youth. And so then the question is how to get good quality content in their hands to be able to share. And you mentioned the National Health Portal. How's that for a summary, Sanjay?
Yeah, absolutely. No, the requirement of a quality content is very, and especially if we want the health workers to create such kind of message, then we have to train them for the creation of the message, development of the message, or we have to motivate them to do so, because they have knowledge, they know the community nerves, and they know the actual facts in the community, what they are doing, and what are the likings of the community youths, particularly in the rural area. All these things they are very much aware. But the thing is that how to develop, what kind of messages has to be shared, construction of a messages, all these things has to be they need a training particularly for that. That is the problem which I have faced when I'm making or training them in our diploma in health education.
Right. Thank you very much, Sanjay. Corey, you've written a nice long comment, and Nishid has another comment. Corey, could you just summarize or react to the previous comments if you'd like?
So sorry. My summary was, or my summary of what I wrote is more just thinking of that question too, of the opportunities that exist. And if we're building out digital campaigns anyway, and especially in thinking about apps or whatever, just trying to find those communication points between parents and adolescents, since we know that that's a huge sticking point, is that parents have a tendency to not want their adolescents having access to this information. And so a reminder to them of, what, so some type of outreach that would be for both of them, specifically geared towards the parents, saying, this is what kids are curious about, and this is where they may go to find information, and why that might not be the healthiest way to go about it. So why this, this particular app or whatever we may be working with would be a better alternative. And then having a page that is specifically geared to the adolescents, and basically what we're already talking about, but then having another portal or page or whatever that is communication prompts between adolescents and their parents, or other way around, and that helps to, like, this is a very common discord between parents and adolescents, and so if this is what's happening between the two of you now, here's maybe a communication prompt, or a communication skill, or a discussion prompt that could help open up those avenues of conversation. And what I said in my comment is, I recognize this is very pie in the sky, and especially when resources are already an issue, and but if we're going to build it, is there a way to build it robustly enough to engage adults in a way that makes adolescents' access to this information more comfortable?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Corey. Would someone like to react to Corey's suggestions? Perhaps someone who has some experience with implementing and trying to reach both youth and their families, their parents? I'm not seeing any hands.
We are
Okay.
actually doing that for our adolescent mental health programs, which are targeted at school children with very high levels of stress, anxiety, and depression, and a very high rate of suicidal tendencies. In that program, we actually have to reach both parents and adolescents. So we do it differently, and we talk about buddy in a buddy language for the youth, and work with them on either online school sessions or offline school sessions. But with parents, we tend to bring them into a parenting workshop, for half a day or a day. In fact, we are just in the midst of planning out a very large scale program of this kind, with relation to a issue that we face in our state, which is child marriages, which is an SDG goal as well. So with relation to that, we are now working on a program which delivers a classroom session, a module, to rural schools and to children in the age group of 13 to 16, and then separately to their parents in the same classroom. So we're actually working on how to develop the content for that, and doing exactly the same kind of thing. But if we're not kind of found that social media won't reach either of those groups in rural areas.
Thanks very much. So you mentioned a couple of things I'd like to pull out. One was you mentioned, Nishant, that it's a mental health program. And then
the first one was a mental health program. The second one is a program on child marriages, on ending child marriages. In the state that I'm in, Maharashtra, about 22% of all marriages are child marriages.
Okay. And to what extent is that first program, the mental health program, is that using content that might be related to reproductive health or family planning?
No, it doesn't at all. It's not
Okay.
at all. It stresses are totally different areas. So not at all. I just mentioned that because she was talking about reaching parents, and Corey was talking about reaching parents and adolescents together. So
yes. Yes.
That's why I mentioned that. Yeah.
And then also the relationship between services, in-person services or in-person meetings with also social media outreach or content.
Yeah, that's a tough one. We tried an experiment and that worked very well. What we did was we created a song about adolescent mental health. We wrote lyrics and we set it to a popular Hindi film song, which was sung on the occasion of the 10-day festival that is about to start in the next few days in India, leading up to the Dashera festival. So it's a community dance that Gujaratis India popularized called the Garba. So there's a Hindi film song about it. So what we did was we had a group of college students come in and we got them to write totally new lyrics, but set it to the same music. And then we had a dance instructor from the UK, who's an Indian, a very big dance instructor in the UK, come online, and we engaged young people across the country to join in and learn how to choreograph new steps for this music. They had no way of knowing that the lyrics would be about mental health. So but it was very, very popular. And for some reason, we got such a lot of calls from youth in care homes across the country that was a surprise to us.
So quite a lot of user-generated content
yes,
and entertaining content and formats.
Yes.
Very much approaching youth where they are. A couple comments coming in from Amy and from Joanna. Amy, would you like to share your comment?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I was thinking that the best way I was agreeing with Corey, and that some of the best ways to build trust between adolescents, youth, and adults in the digital place means eventually bringing that experience offline. And different people are going to be in different young people are going to be in different places and readiness in order to sort of show up in real life. Some have the agency, desire, and empowerment to take that encounter right away, that in real life encounter right away. And some might need additional interactions to feel safe. There's a program that I know that works with cyber educators, where there's a lot of back and forth dialogue digitally, and it helps to eventually build a place of trust, and that then turns into service delivery. And other people might not be ready, young people might not be ready for that in real life experience without other add-on trust building elements, like having someone partner with them on the way. So I was just thinking, to answer to the second question there, of how opportunities to build trust in a digital space means recognizing the readiness of multiple different types of young people to get them eventually in real life at services.
Great, thank you very much. Several comments in the chat. Joanna's asking about the issue of equity in reaching youth through digital media and how trust can play a role in that. Corey appreciates the focus on mental health that Nishita has shared with us. And thanks for sharing that intervention. And then MA has, sorry if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly. Would you be able to come off mute and share your comments?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Amy Wurzberg, and I'm the Youth Health and Wellbeing Program Specialist at Peace Corps. And I put in the chat, so one of the things I've been thinking a lot lately is the need for more education on building media literacy skills, so young people can have more of a critical lens of the media they're consuming, and sort of have skills to be able to analyze, and think about who created this messages, what techniques are used, why am I consuming it in this way, how might others see it. And I've seen this being done very successfully in health education classes, but I think it's not always a part of the curriculum. And I think, young people are always, and really everyone, especially as we've seen during COVID, are going to be consuming all sorts of different messages around health. And I think building skills to be able to sort through, what is evidence-based, what's coming from a scientific lens. And I think I guess one of the things I've been thinking about is how do we make sure that we're including sort of the skill building and that critical lens. So young people have the skills to be able to look at the resources. And so it's not just ensuring that they have quality information, but making sure that they also know how to sort through what is quality and what isn't quality information.
Thanks very much, Amy. We did talk with someone from IREX, which has a Learn to Discern curriculum, focused on more on kind of governance and news, but yes, very, very relevant and certainly a foundation to this work. And Amy's agreeing. Finland has an incredible platform to address quality information. Would anyone else like to react to this topic on quality information? And yes, Laurette has mentioned most kids end up learning from porn. And yeah, that's come up certainly in our review, is that erotic content is what other platforms are competing against for informing or engaging with youth, I think particularly boys. So a couple comments on the table, if anybody would like to react.
Just one comment on what Amy
Yes.
mentioned. We use a very interesting experiment. There is a NGO here in Bombay, which works on online safety. So in order to get youth hooked on to understanding what is good quality, how to differentiate good quality content and poor content and poor security standards, we actually got in that NGO to do sessions on how to be online, safe online, and not get sexually exploited online. This really hooked youth. So I mean, what the NGO did was they showed them what are the standard methods of how your information gets taken up on the net, how it gives away information, how you can secure yourself. So nobody had talked to this youth before, and they loved it because they didn't get this kind of information from the parents, or because anyway in India there is a huge generation divide where it comes to digital literacy between previous generation, current generations. So this hooked them. So that was a method to get them to understand, to be more to discern more about quality of content, online.
Thanks very much. And Nishid or Loretz asked, what's the name of the NGO?
And that NGO, I will give you the name of that NGO in a second. I will put it in the message. Yeah.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. Beth, you've had several comments. Would you like to bring those into the audio?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, just fine. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was really just saying that I love the idea of the literacy skills for young people, and young people worldwide, I would say, could really use those kind of discernment skills to decide what's real, what's fake. Even adults could use that. Parents can use that. I'm echoing what's being said, and I made an earlier comment. I'm having to look back. But anyway, I think we're closing up soon, so I will stop there and let others share.
So as just mentioned, we'd like to take this opportunity, take a little bit of time to report out on what was discussed in each of the sessions. So I'll go around the table and invite each facilitator to give about a 2 or 3 minute overview of the more interesting points or the more robust discussion questions that you exchanged about. So perhaps first we can hear from Catherine Harbour and the Digital Youth Family Planning Review, and then from Leopoldine on M-Pathways, and finally from Ton. Catherine?
Okay, thank you. Well, we had a terrific discussion, a lot of great inputs. Some of the points that we touched on was what sort of some of the program experiences, particularly from the Center for Social and Behavior Change Communication, Mumbai in India, about experiences of developing content and trying to find content that would resonate. A particularly successful example that was shared was a film, Komal, 6 minutes animated, that was shared widely and got a lot of attention and reach. We also discussed how just being committed to a single site or trying to chase kind of likes is not the best approach. Rather, the content, generating content that's going to be appealing is helpful. And also budgeting appropriately so that those kind of so that sites or content can be maintained, not just developed, but also maintained. One of the participants shared some experiences working with health workers in India that they're forwarding. They don't create messages, but they do have so much contact with the intended audience. Is a very valuable resource for learning about them and the importance of creating good content and making it available to the National Health Portal. We talked about building campaigns or building outreach that is meant to appeal to youth and also to their parents and their families, as well as providers, and encouraging parents and families and youth to talk together. We also had a final comment on that about if parents knew that their children were getting information from porn, they would probably be more motivated to engage with the content. We talked about building trust and building education on media skills and what sort of outreach might be available or appropriate to do to help youth discern what's good information, what's correct, trustworthy, and also how to be safe online. So thanks very much to all of the participants in our discussion.
Great. Thank you so much, Catherine. That was a great overview. And I think, yeah, those considerations and the culture that exists in the virtual and digital space sometimes reflects, but sometimes is quite different from what we see at the community level and in real life, which perhaps is a nice segue over to Leopoldine, who gave an overview of a community-based and discussion-based guide called In Pathways, which aims to facilitate discussion and conversation between providers and young people to increase empathy among providers for young people's experiences concerning reproductive health and family planning, and also the use of a similar discussion guide between young people and community members. So over to you, Leopoldine.
Effectivement, donc on a parlé de l'expérience du pretest et de l'adaptation d'impact, oui, vous l'avez déjà bien défini, pour faciliter l'empathie des personnes adultes donc vis-à-vis des jeunes et aussi aider les jeunes à avoir accès aux informations et aux services de planification familiale et de santé de la reproduction. Alors, durant la discussion, on a discuté sur comment s'assurer que les jeunes recherchent les informations sur la santé de la reproduction. Donc, on a parlé du fait que déjà, les jeunes ont une difficulté à avoir conscience de leurs besoins en matière de santé de la reproduction. Donc, il fallait les aider à identifier ces besoins. Donc, on a pris l'exemple sur les cas qui revenaient de façon fréquente durant les discussions communautaires, donc où les parents, dans leurs interventions, disaient « tel jeune n'a pas le droit de penser à une question précise en matière de santé de la reproduction », alors que dans le scénario, on voyait que c'était un besoin du jeune. Donc, on y est, au fait, on va dire, le besoin au jeune là d'avoir, on y est au jeune le fait d'avoir le droit d'avoir, au fait, des besoins en matière de santé de la reproduction, de planification familiale. Donc, on a parlé de sources d'information, notamment sur le digital, donc avec la campagne Impact. Merci mon héros, donc, qui est sur Facebook, Instagram. On a parlé aussi de la nécessité d'avoir une synergie d'action, donc, entre le niveau institutionnel, les prestataires et aussi la communauté. Donc, nous tous, avoir une synergie d'action pour permettre aux jeunes de pouvoir avoir accès aux informations et aux services de santé de la reproduction. Donc, on a aussi parlé du fait de l'importance de créer un cadre légal qui permet aux jeunes d'avoir accès, comme j'ai dit, à ces différents services, donc d'avoir des lois qui régissent, on va dire, tout ce domaine-là, et aussi de créer des centres conviviaux aux jeunes, de telle sorte que lorsque le jeune décide de partir se renseigner ou de partir utiliser des méthodes de contraception, il faudrait qu'il puisse avoir tout un cadre, que ce soit au niveau des heures, au niveau des heures des services, et aussi au niveau de l'empathie, voilà, qui qu'il doit pouvoir voir ou de l'empathie que le prestataire doit pouvoir avoir vis-à-vis de lui. On a parlé, comme on a dit, de la contribution de la communauté, donc la contribution, que ce soit des leaders religieux qui ont aussi un grand rôle à jouer dans nos communautés, donc de la contribution des parents. Et il y a eu une question qui est revenue. Est-ce que lors de nos discussions, il nous est arrivé de confronter des personnes d'une même famille? Donc, ce qui a été dit, c'est que on n'a pas eu de cas où on a confronté des personnes d'une même famille, mais par contre, on a eu des discussions où on a eu des parents, un parent et sa fille, et lors d'une question qui demandait quelle est la relation que vous souhaitez avoir avec votre parent, la jeune fille a dit, je souhaiterais vraiment que mon père puisse s'impliquer dans notre éducation, donc on puisse avoir une relation plus proche avec nos parents. Et malheureusement, mon père est souvent occupé. Donc, ce qu'on a dit, c'est que à la fin de l'utilisation de l'outil Impact, ce qu'on ne souhaiterait pas, c'est qu'on puisse venir avec un ton accusateur, donc que les parents puissent se sentir jugés. Et ça, c'est ce qu'on ne souhaite pas. Donc, on veut qu'à la fin de l'utilisation, à chaque fois que les gens finissent d'utiliser l'outil Impact, que ces personnes puissent se dire que les parents puissent comprendre les jeunes, mais que aussi le jeune puisse comprendre le parent. Donc, à ce père particulier, on lui a dit, on comprend très bien que au niveau des occupations, ça peut être difficile, mais il pourrait trouver des moments de qualité avec ses enfants où il pourrait passer soit en regardant la télé, soit dans la cuisine et essayer de discuter avec eux pour pouvoir leur donner la bonne information en matière de santé de la reproduction et de planification familiale. Merci.
Great. Thank you so much for that thorough overview, Leopoldine. And you spoke again about these different reference groups that are so important and have such an impact on young people's lives, on whether or not their questions about reproductive health and family planning get answered. And sometimes indeed these same reference groups have their own questions and their own concerns. And it's so important to create, as you were saying, those opportunities for dialogue, those opportunities for exchange, for understanding one another's perspectives, to really open the floodgates for having, even if at a trickle at first, these conversations about these often sensitive topics, which again provides a nice bridge into Thon's activities and the discussion we had in the Liberia breakout room about the adolescent health discussion groups, which involve providers, parents, and young people as well. So Thon, over to you to give an overview of that discussion.
Thanks so much. So we're able to discuss our adolescent health activity, which is based on our Let's Talk About Sex activity. So we're able to discuss how that activity was initiated, how it has built young people and parents understanding about family planning commodities, how it has built relationship between the youth and the providers based on constant awareness. And then we're also able to talk about how it has expanded access to family planning, and then it has also been able to build trust. So we were also able to talk about how our supervisors are working with the young people to ensure that the right messages are given and help to erase some of the myths that are around, and how our community health assistants are also reaching out through community awareness activity to provide the right information for parents so that parents can be able to have access to information and reduce the pressure on their young children and prevent them from accessing family planning commodities. So that was some of the things that we were able to discuss in our group. That is over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And another heartfelt thanks to all of our presenters and to our participants today for contributing to those discussions. Now, slide please. I'd like to hand to pass the microphone over to Amy Uccello, who is at USAID's Office of Population and Reproductive Health, and is a senior youth and reproductive health technical advisor. Her technical expertise centers on adolescent sexual and reproductive health and rights, adolescent development, cross-sectoral youth programming, and meaningful adolescent and youth engagement. As a senior advisor. Ms. Uccello manages a global portfolio of youth programs offering technical guidance in these areas, as well as demand generation, service delivery, and quality of care, supported by expertise in measurement, evaluation, and research. On behalf of Breakthrough Action, thank you so much for joining us today, Amy, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Erin, and thank you to the participants. Thank you to those who were moderating each of the sessions. I only wish that I could have listened to all three at the same time, but I look forward to the notes as they come out in the future. So social behavior change is essential for family planning, reproductive health programming, and is particularly critical intervention with and for young people. We know that lifetime behaviors, both positive and negative, often originate in adolescence, where young people are formulating their identities, learning their likes and dislikes, conforming or challenging social and gender norms, all the while trying to form and maintain relationships. They're also in the midst of rapidly changing cognitive, emotional, and moral development. And this presents an incredible opportunity to guide young people towards healthy behaviors that they can take with them for a lifetime. But I don't need to convince you that behavior change initiatives are important in AYSRHR. You've already listened to this webinar. The presentations and roundtables today shared incredibly innovative ways of answering the questions posed at the start of the session on how to address persistent challenges in youth SBC programming and find ways to build trust between youth and adults. The multimedia campaign in Côte d'Ivoire aimed to increase provider empathy for young people by recognizing the divide in understanding that drives provider bias. By introducing a one-on-one relationship between youth and providers, that divide can close and trust can be built. Research told us that the digital space offers young people the anonymity and bias-free access they need to feel safe while waiting for more positive societal norms. Allowing young people to design the products and content in ways that align with their values, priorities, and experiences builds trust in these digital sources, and therein the SRH messaging that we are sharing. And the listening groups in Liberia allow young people to talk about challenging SRH topics in a safe environment and drive their peers towards trusted health resources. The unique AYS initiatives all start with the notion of building trust and prioritizing meaningful adolescent engagement as equal partners using platforms that they feel safe. Hopefully, the success of these programs can motivate trust as a core component to future youth SBC programming. I'd like to close the session with one more suggestion on how to catalyze trust by addressing the concept of second chances. SBC often requires repetition in multiple venues from multiple sources. What this repetition might inadvertently introduce to young people is that there's only one way to live, lest you be labeled bad, wrong, or broken. My hope for youth SBC is that we create a space for error, experimentation, and second chances. Mistakes are often our best teachers. And as much as we aim to mitigate the dangers posed by those mistakes, we also do not want to exclude those youth who've already lived very adult lives in the contexts in which we work. Telling youth that behavior is fluid could introduce the concept of renewable opportunities, that grit, perseverance, and adaptation are highly valued, and that their life trajectory is not fixed. There are opportunities to turn your decisions and behaviors towards greater success, and most of all, it's never too late. Creating positive norms, expectations, and perceptions of youth is an evidence-based positive youth development approach, and it's our role to create an environment that allows young people to rebound and realign, and convey that our messages are not about judgment, but about hope. Only when young people feel accepted can they trust our programs and messages. I want to thank you for indulging me in this last word. I am grateful for all of the participants, the organizers, and thank you so much for joining this webinar, and keep an eye out for the materials as they come from the team going forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amy. I love that concept of a second chance. And I think that's something that everyone can keep front of mind. And that's something that we also try and figure into our programs, especially through the Merci Mon Euro campaign, is really, if you try once as a parent, even if you have an uncomfortable conversation with your child and it doesn't go so well, it's okay. Try again, continue, and also give those same second chances and that same grace to young people in your life as well. And I love that idea. I think it's such an important concept to keep in mind, especially in this realm of programs and interventions that we're working on. Thank you so much for those closing remarks. And another another round of thanks to each of our presenters today, and to all of the participants who contributed to the conversations and who joined us. Thank you so much. And we'll be sharing and you'll have a poll popping up on your screen right now. Thank you so much, Marcella. And so if you wouldn't mind describing your workplace and participating in that poll as soon as possible and before you leave the session today. Otherwise, thank you and bonne continuation. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.